Yes, I knew that Bobby Reds met the Prime Minister, and I know that he knew him. I was not there when that was back in the early 1990s, and I was on leave and abroad. And when I came back, he told me, Bobby told me that he had met, at the time he was a young man, he wasn't the member of parliament yet, Andrew Holness, and Bobby said that that Andrew Holness is going to be the next Prime Minister, and I asked him how you know, and he said to me that he told me that his mother was a chef for Donald Sangster, the former JLP Prime Minister who died. Some say it was poison, but Bobby say it wasn't poison because it was his mother that cooked for him and his family. And he as a little boy, he knew Donald Sangster, and that's what he told me back then. And he told me that Andrew Holness was going to be the Prime Minister, and I'm like, well, how do you know that? And he was like, I know because Edward Seaga are the best man ever as Prime Minister in Jamaica, in which both of us agree on the same. But it's just that I received some calls from people from Toil telling me that Bobby Reds and the Prime Minister, then a young JLP man, caretaker, they were playing domino up in Toil, and Josie Whale was present at the time. I know Josie Whale very well, and Josie Whale know Bobby Reds very well too, because when he used me used to hang out at Kling Kling, and at times, because I know Josie Whale before I was a police officer, and he's a good friend of my father because of Ura is from Jonestown, and that's why I had a good relationship with the people from in a Cockburn pen. I never had a problem with the people at Toil, as I said before, and I stated, and even Gunter can state it categorically. That is one place that they have. When we were at Unspear, there was no reason for us to patrol Toil, period, none. Everything has to do with statistic. We have to look where the crimes are being committed, and that's the area that we normally patrol. Toil was when the crime report come in the nil. Nothing is coming from Toil. People sometimes, history does not begin inside Parliament. Sometimes history doesn't begin behind the gates of Jamaica House. Sometimes history begins around a domino table. A little table in a Jamaica community where men gather, domino slams, people laugh, politics is debated, and nobody knows what tomorrow will bring. And tonight I want to take you back to Toil, Kingston 11, in the 1990s. Because according to residents who remember those days, long before Andrew Holness became Prime Minister of Jamaica, he and my late partner, District Constable Sylford, Bobby Reds. Yes, welcome to the Jamaica Young Police channel. To our loyal viewers, subscribers and Patreon member. At the channel, we are a group of law-abiding citizens who believe in the rule of law and respect the rights of every citizen, but not the ones who do not subscribe to such behavior. We do believe in and support preemptive strikes because they save lives. This is a logical conclusion because preemptive strikes save lives and prevent the further loss of lives. We are all about saving lives at this channel. We at the channel aid criminals with a passion and do not want them over here. We do not want your views, your subscriptions, your likes or your comments. Please go elsewhere where the red carpet is waiting for you. Over here, we want you to go to prison or the departure lounge at Madden. Moving on to today's video. Williams cross path in that community. Residents have told me the connection came through a woman known as Pam, who later moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And according to those recollections, this wasn't simply a situation where two men pass each other on the road and said morning. No, they sat down, they socialized, and on more than one occasion they played dominoes together with other people in Towile. And I can tell you from memory, the last occasion I personally remember seeing them playing dominoes was in 1999, after the gas riots. That is what the resident told me. Think about that. Look at Jamaica then. Now look at Jamaica today. Look at Andrew Holness then. Now look at the office he holds today. And look at Bobby Reds, the man who spent years serving communities as a district constable. The man who became my partner. The man whose name may never appear prominently in Jamaica history books, but whose fingerprints are all over the lives he touched. Bobby Reds is gone now, and his funeral brings me back to one simple question. Do the relationships we formed before titles, security details, and political power still mean something after we reach the top? I'm not here to attack Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Quite the opposite. As I said before and I say again, he's the best Prime Minister since Edward Seaga. And I say it without any apologies. There's only one thing that I disagree with him on, is to give criminal clean police record. And when you come on to the FLA and police fingerprint, but that's for another discussion. I'm telling this story because I want Jamaica to remember something beautiful about the country we once knew. There was a Jamaica where a young politician could sit in a community and play domino with an ordinary policeman and ordinary residents. Beat domino, pass man, get sick love, and it just joy. No red carpet, no ceremony, just Jamaicans. And Prime Minister Andrew Holness, if you remember Bobby Reds and those Towile days, this message is for you. Come and say goodbye. Not simple as Prime Minister. Come as a young man who once sat around that domino table in the early 1990s. Before the motorcades, to understand why this story means something to me. Younger Jamaicans have to understand what communities like Towile were like then. This was before social media, before everybody carried a camera in his pocket, before every politician's appearance could become a TikTok clip within 30 seconds. People interacted differently. You could know somebody without having a photograph proving that you knew him. You could sit around a domino table for hours without anybody thinking, take out the camera. Nobody was thinking about Facebook. There was no Instagram. There was no YouTube. The evidence of friendship and community interaction existed primarily in the memories of the people who were there. That is important when I tell you this story. I'm not presenting somebody else's memory as a government document. I am telling you what residents have said, and I am separating that from what I personally remember seeing. Residents of Towile have told me that a woman they knew as Pam was instrumental in Andrew Holness meeting Bobby Reds. Pam is from Towile. Pam subsequently moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. According to those residents, Bobby Reds, Andrew Holness, Josie Whale, and others spent time together socially, including playing dominoes. And they were reportedly multiple occasions. Now, here's where my own recollection into the story. Bobby told me that, that he had met Andrew Holness then. We knew Portia Simpson personally, but he's the one that told me that Andrew Holness was going to be Prime Minister. As they said, it was after the gas riot in 1999 was the last time. That details matter because it puts you in a particular Jamaica. This wasn't Andrew Holness after decades at the highest level of government. This was a much younger politician. Nobody sitting around that domino table could have known with certainty where everybody's life would eventually take them. One man would eventually become Prime Minister. Another would eventually retire after giving years of his life to policing the community in St. Andrew South. And decades later, one of those men would be appearing on the world stage representing Jamaica as Prime Minister, and the other one would be preparing for a state funeral. A simple funeral for a retired district constable. That contrast is what made the story powerful. The domino table was Jamaican social media back then. People, chat, enjoy, game of domino and laugh, give man pass. A domino is all about thinking, outsmart the other person, or you can think. People did not grow up in Jamaica during that era might underestimate the significance of dominoes. Dominoes wasn't simply a game. Domino table was our social network. Before Facebook, there was a domino table. Man, you play that for some people are addicted to it, Before Twitter, there was a domino table. Before WhatsApp groups, there was a domino table. News traveled there. Arguments happened there. Politics was discussed there. Football was discussed there. Cricket, community problems were discussed there. And friendship were created there. You could have a policeman sitting beside a tradesman, a businessman beside an unemployed youth, a politician beside somebody who didn't have $2 in his pocket. And when the domino game started, everybody had to play by the same rules. Your tiger couldn't save you from a pass. No, you have to just hug up that and just say, God. Your money couldn't save you. Your political connections couldn't save you. If somebody gave you 6 love, you got 6 love, bam, that's it. Domino at the table, everybody laugh, and the game continue. That was community. That is why the image of Bobby Reds and a young Andrew Holness sitting around a domino table means something larger to me than domino. It represents proximity. It represents accessibility. It represents a Jamaica where people occupying different positions in society could still share ordinary spaces. So, Bobby was a people person because, him just, play domino with then Andrew Holness. Some younger viewers may hear only a year 1999. Those of us who lived through that period remember the atmosphere. Jamaica experienced major unrest surrounding the government's increase in fuel taxes. Fortunately for Jamaican people, they haven't experienced any taxes under this Prime Minister, Andrew Holness. Roads were blocked. Demonstrations spread. The country was tense. Politics was intense. Communities felt that pressure. And somewhere inside that period is this very ordinary memory that stay with the people. A domino game. That contrast fascinates me. Outside, Jamaica was wrestling with the major national issues. Inside communities, people were still being people. They were talking. Yeah, people were talking, laughing, playing dominoes, building relationships. That is the Jamaica I remember. And that is why decades later, the story carries a completely different emotional weight. Because nobody at that table knew what the next quarter century would bring. Andrew Holness rose to the top. That his political journey continued year after year, election after election, responsibility after responsibility. Eventually, the young politician became the Prime Minister of Jamaica. So even Bobby did predict it, that Andrew Holness was going to be a Prime Minister one day for Jamaica. I never said that because, I'm not, it's just so it goes. Think about the transformation. The young man who once sit casually in a community surrounded by the machinery that necessarily accompanies the office of Prime Minister. Security, schedules, briefings, international meetings, cabinet, parliament, national emergency, diplomacy. Thousands of demands competing for one man's attention. I recognize all of that. That is why this presentation isn't Prime Minister Andrew Holness must attend this funeral or else. No, that's unfair. None of us knows the Prime Minister's complete schedule. None of us know what security arrangement would be required. None of us know what national responsibilities may arise. My message is much simpler. Yes, my message is much simpler. If you can come, Mr. Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Michael Holness. Because sometimes a funeral isn't about politics. Sometimes it's about remembering who were before life changed. And the other man kept serving. While one man's journey eventually took him to Jamaica House, Bobby Reds continued along a very different road. Police work, community work, family, ordinary Jamaican life, and eventually retirement. They said that even since his retirement, they had seen Bobby Reds and the Prime Minister up by Pilly Black's Plaza and they were talking briefly. No motorcades were waiting for Bobby Reds. No television cameras followed him. There was no cabinet. But that doesn't mean his life was insignificant. This is something we have to correct in Jamaican society. We sometimes measure importance by rank. Commissioner of police, superintendent, minister, prime minister, CEO, celebrity. But some of the people who keep the country functioning will never have any of those titles. The district constable who knows everybody in the community. The teacher who educates 3 generations. The nurse who treats thousands of patients. The sanitation workers who gets up before sunrise. The farmer, the mechanic, the police officer, the community elder. History doesn't always put their photograph on the wall. But Jamaica could not function without them. Bobby Reds was one of those people. Years passed, careers changed, life moved on. Bobby Reds eventually retired. And after his retirement, people said that they see him at Pilly Black's Plaza in Tower Hill, Kingston 11. Think about that image. Not a government office, not some exclusive club, Tower Hill. They see him all the time in the police area, out by Chris at 3 Mile. Still connected to the community. Still Bobby Reds. That's something I want younger people to understand. Retirement removes the uniform. It doesn't erase the history. A policeman may retire on Friday. On Saturday morning, everybody knew him for 20 or 30 years. Still knows exactly who he is. The uniform is gone. The relationships remain. And eventually, even the strongest amongst us reach the end of the road. Look how much Jamaica has changed on this Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Now compare those years with 2026. The technology changed, the politics changed, the security environment changed significantly. The media changed for the worse. The communities changed. The politicians changed. And we changed. Today, if the Prime Minister sat down in Tower Hill for a domino game, imagine what would happen. 20 phones would come out. People recording, somebody would live stream it. Somebody would put it on TikTok. Somebody would turn it into a meme. Political supporters would argue over what it meant. Opponents would analyze every person standing in the background. Within hours, the entire country might know. But in those days, a domino game could be a domino game. And perhaps that is one of the things we have lost. The ability for public figures to have ordinary human moments. The power of memory. There's another lesson here. Memory become increasingly important as generations disappear. When Bobby Reds was alive, you could ask Bobby Reds. When other residents from that generation were alive, you could ask them. But every year another witness to Jamaica's community history passes away. And when those people leave, libraries disappear. That is why I tell these stories. Not because every recollection should automatically be treated as indisputable historical fact. It shouldn't. Human memory can be perfect, but oral history still matters. So I remember, I'm just digressing. I remember talking with a schoolmate by the name of Garrett Rhule. His name is Dr. Garrett Rhule. And yeah, he had met Bobby and we were talking and Bobby was telling him about, Garrett was telling me that the Prime Minister Andrew Holness and him attend school at St. Catherine High. And Bobby was telling him that, you know, I meet him and play domino and stuff. And Garrett tell him, say, boy, you know, man, the man, they cool, you know. You understand? You know, that was tripping because Garrett and I were in lesser class together. We went to St. Mary's College together. Bright guy. I'm a nephrologist. So, moving on. So, oral history still matters. You have to understand that. You can't, you know, when several people independently remember the same places, relationships and events, those recollections deserve to be documented and where possible compare with contemporary records. Otherwise 20 years from now, yes, you know, so we don't want perhaps nobody will know. I don't want that. The question for our Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Michael Holness. So now I come directly to Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Prime Minister, this isn't a political challenge. This isn't JLP versus PMP LGBTQ plus criminal organization. This isn't an attempt to embarrass you, sir. It is an invitation. If your memories of Tower Hill include Bobby Reds, if you remember sitting around that domino table, if you remember the people who were there in the early 1990s when you were a caretaker before you even won your first election, then you understand why this story matters. A man you knew has reached the end of his journey. And sometimes the greatest demonstration of leadership is not standing behind a podium. Sometimes leadership is walking quietly into a church, taking a seat, looking at a grieving family and saying, I remember him. Imagine what those 3 words could mean to Bobby Red's family. I remember him, that's all. Josie Wales and the people who were there. And the Toile story gets even more interesting because according to the recollections being shared about those days, Josie Wales was among the people around that social environment as well. Pam was there too. I knew Pam, but I wasn't there, I wasn't present, I was away in the United States of America. I have never met the Prime Minister per se. The only time I saw him was on TV. Again, I want to be careful with the distinction. I am telling you about memories and account from people connected to that community of Toile. This is not me pretending that somebody wrote minutes at a domino table. Nobody was sitting there saying, meeting called to order at 7:42 p.m. October 1999 or early days in the early 90s. This was Jamaican community life. And that is exactly what makes the story beautiful. Imagine the personalities. Imagine the personalities who could converge around one community space. A policeman, a young politician, an entertainer, residents, friends, everybody around the same environment. That's a piece of Jamaican social history. And those dominoes may teach us something. Every domino has two sides. Every life has different chapters. Prime Minister Andrew Holness wasn't always Prime Minister. Bobby Reds wasn't always retired. Josie Wales wasn't always an established name. And I wasn't always sitting behind a microphone telling these stories. Once upon a time, everybody was trying to make his way through life. That's why we should be careful how we treat people when we rise. Because you never know who knew you before the title. You never know who remembers you before the success. And more importantly, you should never forget the people who knew you when you were you. This is bigger than Bobby Reds. This message is bigger than one funeral. It is about how Jamaica treats people after their usefulness to the system has ended. When somebody is serving, everybody needs him. When the policeman is working, officer, help me. Mr. Bobby, come quickly. Officer, investigate this. Officer, protect us. Then retirement comes. The phone stops ringing. The institution moves forward. A younger generation takes over. Eventually, the person dies. And suddenly, we discover how quickly decades of service can disappear. That should concern all of us, because every serving police officer today will one day become a former police officer. Every politician will become a former politician. Every commissioner will become a former commissioner. And every prime minister eventually become a former prime minister. Title expires. Legacy doesn't. Why showing up matters? At funeral, people sometimes says, we can't see who came. That's true. Bobby Reds will not look around the church and count attendees. But his family can. His friends can. His former colleagues can. Community can. Funerals are partly for the living. Showing up says, your father life mattered. Your husband life mattered. Your wife life mattered. Your friends service mattered. We did not forget him. And when somebody with the stature of a prime minister attends or even sends an appropriate acknowledgement, it can communicate something larger than personal friendship. It can say, Jamaica remembers service. Don't turn this into politics. I want to say this respectfully to my audience. Please don't turn this into partisan warfare. Don't say, if Andrew Holness doesn't attend, it proves this. No. Don't say if Andrew attends this, it proves this. That you are a full-fledged Labourite, you and Bobby Reds. We don't know his schedule. We don't know his commitments. We don't know what circumstances may exist. The purpose of this video is to extend the invitation and preserve the history. If he attends, wonderful, beautiful. That would be great. If official duties prevent him from attending, that does not erase whatever relationship or acquaintance existed decades ago. That's fairness, and fairness matters to me. 27 years. Just think about that. A domino slam against a table. People laugh. A young politician is sitting there. A policeman is sitting there. Nobody knows the future. Then the pages start turning. Years become decades. And before, this man, this District Constable Sylford, Bobby Reds Williams, had predicted the future, that Andrew Holness would become Prime Minister of Jamaica. I did not meet Andrew Holness. I have never met him. People moves overseas. Pam goes to Philadelphia. Careers change. Children grow up. Government change. People retire. Some people die. And one day you wake up and realize the ordinary moment you barely thought about in the early 1990s and then in 1999 has become history. That's life. We really recognize history while we are living it. Bobby Red's my partner, my friend, my brother. You have finished your shift. Whatever disagreements people may have about policing, politics, or Jamaica, nobody can take away the years you lived. I know you live your life to the fullest. You know to enjoy yourself, believe you me. Nobody can erase the communities you walk through. Nobody can erase the people who knew you. Nobody can erase Tower, Kingston 11. Nobody can erase the domino table. And nobody can erase the memories held by those who were there. The young politician became Prime Minister. The policeman became a retiree. And now one has gone ahead. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, if your schedule permits, if security permits, if circumstances permit, I respectfully ask you to consider attending the funeral of Sylford, Bobby Reds Williams. Not because somebody on YouTube demanded it, not because you owe me anything, and certainly not for politics. Come, because there are moments when yesterday reaches forward and touches today. Come, because somewhere in Tower there once stood a domino table. Come, because before most Honourable Prime Minister there was simple Andrew. Before retirement, there was Bobby Reds. And according to the people who remember those days, their path cross. They talk, they socialize, they play dominoes, and now the table has one less player. Yes, and that is how quickly life passes. Today we are arguing over the dominoes. Tomorrow, somebody is carrying our photograph into a church. So give people their flowers while they can smell them. Remember the people who walked beside you before the world knew your name. And when one of them reaches the end of his journey, if circumstances allow it, show up. Prime Minister Holness, if you remember those Tower days, there may be no grand speech necessary. Walk inside, pay your respect, look at Bobby Reds one final time and say, I remember. Because from a domino table in Tower, Kingston 11 to Jamaica House. A lot has changed since the early 1990s. But some things should never change. Respect, memory, friendship, and gratitude for those who serve. Rest well, Sylford Bobby Reds Williams. Your shift is over, but your story is not. Have yourself a beautiful day. Unspear 7 out.